Alright, in this video, we're going to talk about the sample writing assignment number 1, which is similar to the actual writing assignment in Canvas for Math for Teachers 1. And I'll just go over these problems which are similar. Like in problem number 1, if P is false, Q is true, and R is false, find the true values for the following. Okay, so in part A, we got this notation, not P or not P and Q. Actually, this is or. This one is and. Okay. Not P or Q. So in this case here, we're told that P is false. So I'll bring down the squiggly mark for the not for the negation of P, which is false, or Q, which is true. Okay. So now we're going to negate something that's false. If it's not false, that means it is true. Or true. And based on our disjunction, true or true means it has to be true. Okay? For disjunction with the word or, either this is true or this has to be true in order for the whole thing to be true. Okay? Now, part B. This is A. This is B. The negation of P and R. P and R. So bring down the negation, replace the P with with false, because that's what P is. P is false in that problem. And then and, which is the upside down V, R is false. Well, in this case, false and false, okay, has to be false. And then the negation of false would be true. Right? This is one of those conjunctions with the word and if you remember, for conjunction, both have to be true in order for it to be true, or otherwise it is false. Okay? Both have to be true in a conjunction with and in order for it to be true, otherwise it's false. All right, part C. You start with the negation of P or R, and then whatever that is, it'll be and Q. So now we got the negation of P, which is false. And this is or. R is false. Okay. And then this is the and Q, which is true. All right, let's take the negation of false. If it's not false, it has to be true or false, and then and true. Let's start with the parentheses. True or false. For that to be, for this to happen, to be true, either this has to be true or this has to be true, or both. The first and the second is true. So either one of these must be true for the whole thing to be true. Otherwise, it's false. So here we got this part being true. So automatically, the whole thing will be true. And here, both have to be true for the and in order for the whole thing to be true. Otherwise, it's false. So both And that's what we have. Both of them are true, so the whole thing has to be true. And that will be your final answer to that. Okay. So pretty much you're going to have to go back to the negation table, and also for the or, which is your disjunction, and the and, which is the conjunction. Those tables, those truth tables, you need to be familiar with those in order to do these particular type of problems here. All right. Now, number 2 is to complete the truth table that contains the true values of the statement. Not P, excuse me, not P or not Q. Not P or not Q. All right, now we're going to start with this. We got P and Q that are given. Now here we're going to take the negation of that first column. Here, not P is the negation of what P is. All right, so we know not true will be false and not false will be true. So these two have true, so these first two have to be false. That's the negation of P. The negation of false is going to be true. So these two are false, so the negation of P here will be true, and the negation of P there will also be true. Now Q, we look at the column for Q. Take its negation. That means not true is going to be false here and here, and the negation of false will be true for this one and for that one. And now we're going to look at these two columns to come up with this final column. Not P or not Q. Okay, so in this case here, for an or, either the first or the second must be true for the whole thing to be true. Otherwise, it's false. And the only way that I see that true is not in either one of these is this right here. They're both false. So this first row is going to be false because they're both false. The others have true statements somewhere as their answer. So false or true, that's going to end up being true. True or false will be true. True or true, of course, will be true. Okay. Okay. So again, be familiar with the negation table that I gave you, and also the or table, which is your disjunction, and the and table, which is your disjunction. Okay. Now, number 3 is writing the converse, inverse, and the contrapositive for each of these statements here, starting with part A. If x is equal to 5, then 2x is equal to 10. All right, so that's the statement. Let's write the inverse of that statement. No, the converse. Let's start with the converse first. The converse is just this. We just switch these two statements around. Okay? And that's going to be this. If 2x is equal to 10, then x is equal to 5. Okay? This is like if p, then q. So the converse is going to be if q, then p. So if 2x is equal to 10, then x is equal to 5 would be the converse. The inverse, we take the negation of each of those. If not p, then not q. So the inverse of that would be this. If x is not equal to 5, then 2x is not equal to 10. That would be the inverse. And now for the contrapositive. All right, the contrapositive would be this. You could either negate the converse or take the inverse and just switch the order of these two. It'll be best to just switch the order of these two since I've already got the negation of those. So the contrapositive would be this. If 2x does not equal to 10, then x does not equal to 5. Okay, so that's how we write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of that given statement. Okay, now part B. The statement says if you like this book, then you like mathematics. If you like this book, then you like mathematics. All right, so let's do the converse of that statement. This is like, again, if P, then Q. So the converse would be if Q, then P. So the way that we would write that is that if you like mathematics, then you like this book. Okay, all I did was switch those two around for the converse. All right, the inverse is just the negation of the hypothesis and the conclusion. The hypothesis and the conclusion. Just negate them both. So an inverse would be if you do not like this book, then you do not like mathematics. Okay. And then finally, the contrapositive. To write the contrapositive, you could either look at the converse and negate the hypothesis and the conclusion, or look at the inverse and then just switch the two around. Okay? So I'm going to look at the inverse and just switch the order. So that means I just switch the hypothesis and the conclusion around. So the contrapositive would be something like this. If you do not like mathematics, then you do not like this book. Okay. All right, so that's how you write the converse, the inverse, and the contrapositive of a given statement. Hopefully, this will assist you with completing that first actual writing assignment, number 1, that is available on Canvas for you to work on. And please feel free to ask me any questions by shooting me an email if you need to.